Bifnei Abima, in a week when the rabbi has the flu, or had the flu, it is a wonderful thing to be able to call upon one of the world's scholars on the book of Esther to deliver a few words of Torah on the book of Esther this morning. Our friend and congregant, Dr. Jack Sasson.
Thank you. Well, we all know that this is Shabbat Zachor, and Shabbat Zachor means that we have to remember. And the question becomes, what is there about the book of Esther that we want to remember? Well, the story is rather clear. It wants to tell you that everything that had happened was very precisely historical. You should know that there was a king named Ahasuerus. You should know that da. And also, if you have at all any interest in the history of your past, you'll be able to make a connection between other moments in history when there was also a Jewish boy who managed to do very well in a foreign place, and another Jewish boy who was almost growing up in a family that was going to be completely enslaved but managed to escape. So basically it makes a connection with the past. That's one. The other thing, it explains to you why you are celebrating a holiday named Purim, which is not a Hebrew word at all. You don't know that, but I'm telling you, it's not a Hebrew word at all. It's a good Akkadian word, and it means goral in Hebrew, lot. How to pick a lot, that is, to decide on a day. Remember, this is the story of Haman, how he decided on the right day. So we are celebrating a day, a holiday, that in the past is named after an act that was not common to us, but it became part of our Lord. And finally, of course, it tries to establish the notion that there is always a moment in which hope is gone, but there is always somewhere, somehow, a solution to it, and somehow salvation will come. Okay, so here we are, 2,000, let's say, and 50 years ago, plus or minus. You turn to your son who's now post-bar mitzvah. They didn't have bar mitzvah then, but let's say. And you tell him, read to me Megillat Esther. So the boy who's going to become a Talmud Torah and all that, he starts, Vayhi bimei Ahasuerus hu Ahasuerus hamolech da. And stop. I don't understand a word you're saying. Read it to me in Greek, because that's the language at least I understand. As it happens, there's a wonderful translation from way back there, perhaps 2nd century, perhaps even 3rd century BC, of Megillat Esther, and it was in Greek. So, I read to you the story of Megillat Esther, the opening lines from the Greek version of Megillat Esther, okay? I'm not going to read to you in Greek. I'll read to you in English, because that's Greek to all of us now, and it is okay. Here we go. This is how it starts. In the 2nd year of the reign of great King Ahasuerus, on the 1st day of Nisan, a dream came to Mordecai, son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Jew living at Susa, and holding a high office at the royal court. He was one of the captives whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had deported from Jerusalem with Jeconiah, king of Judah. Notice, it starts a full year before our story of Esther. Continues, the beginning. This was his dream. There were cries and noise, thunder and earthquake, and disorder over the whole earth. Then 2 great dragons came forward, each ready for the fray, and set up a great roar. At the sound of them, every nation made ready to wage war against the nation of the just. A day of darkness and gloom, of affliction. I'm losing my an affliction and distress, oppression and great disturbance on earth. The entire upright nation was thrown into consternation. It goes on telling you, on awakening from this dream and vision of God's design, Mordecai thought deeply about the matter, trying his best way to discover what is the meaning of it at all. He had a dream. This is how it starts. Now notice, if you paid attention, there was a wonderful little line here. This was something that came from God. Sheesh. Our Megillah never mentioned God. This one will mention God every other word. So if you ever want to know where God was hiding, take it from the Jerusalem Bible, which is the Catholic Bible, because they translate the original Septuagint translation of the book of Esther. Now let's continue. All right, so far so good? Now you have noticed that the story has become quite different, because it's no longer a story beginning, and there was a banquet, and and then Vashti, and No, it starts with a dream. And the dream has visions that you can't understand and solve them. So what do you think will happen at the end? At the end of the Greek version, Mordecai will realize what his dream meant, because he will know, and I will tell you soon, he will know what the river is, he will know what the dragons are, and he will know exactly what happened. This is what you would call an apocalyptic type of tale. That is a story that has as its main driving force something you don't understand, and eventually you do. And what makes the connection between the two? What makes the connection between the two is what happened. Okay? So this is a completely different genre, as they say. What does genre mean? Category of story. Esther no longer is a story of two guys fighting in court, and there is a stupid one among them, one bright among them, and there's a beautiful girl, It becomes a story in which something has happened. Way back there, you dream about it, and then it gets resolved at the end. And you solve it by showing that all the designs of God had been there from the beginning. See? All right. Now, that's not the only difference. In fact, here is the second part, as it continued the beginning. Mordecai was at that point, this is at the beginning, Mordecai was at the court with Bigtan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the palace. Having got wind of their plotting and gained knowledge of their designs, he discovered that they were preparing to assassinate King Ahasuerus, and he warned the king against them. The king gave order for the two eunuchs to be tortured, which is probably dipping them in water, all right, to be tortured, and they confessed and were executed. He had these events written in the book of records. Now, how is that different from the Hebrew version? Does anyone recall? The Hebrew version of Mordecai discovering the plot comes later, after the queen Esther had been already made a queen. And he never goes to the king and tells him about it. No, he tells Esther, who tells the king in the name of Mordecai. So that later on in your Hebrew story, when the king cannot sleep at night, he knows exactly who's the person, right, who did it. Well, in fact, the Greeks makes it clear from the beginning that the king all along knew. And to make matter at the same time, as he made him great, but Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, who enjoyed high favor with the king, determined to injure Mordecai in revenge for the affair of the king's two eunuchs. And then it continues. It was in the days of Ahasuerus, exactly, the Hebrew begins from there. Okay? So you see, the frame is different. Completely different. Okay, a couple other things that are different, and then I'll shut up. All right, what are the things that are different? One of them is that any one of you who misses God, as I said, you will discover God a dozen times in this one here. Anytime there is any issue, you have a beautiful prayer that comes out from the mouth of Mordecai and Esther, talking about the greatness of God and how everything that God is doing is actually totally understandable to them. All right? Here are a couple of lines from one of the prayers of Mordecai. Okay? There is a problem for us to know about the book of Esther as we read it in the Hebrew. That problem is, why would a person like Mordecai put so many Jews at risk just because he is totally playing games with another courtier of the king, Haman. After all, in those days, if you become the prime minister, everyone is expected to kowtow to you. What's wrong with this stupid man, Mordecai, not to kowtow? And why would he put us all at risk like that? The prayer of Mordecai explains it in the Greek version. You, God, know all things. You know that neither pride, nor self-esteem, nor vainglory prompted me to do what I have done, to refuse to prostrate myself before proud Haman. Gladly would I have kissed the sole of his feet, had this assured the safety of Israel. But what I have done rather than to place the glory of man, not to place the glory of man above that of God. Acceptable, right? Very nice. Now, here's another question that you may ask yourself. How does a nice man like Mordecai, a Benjaminite, why would he allow his cousin, she was not his niece, his cousin. Actually, the Greek has niece. Nice, huh? So, all right. Cousin, why would he allow her to marry someone? After all, she's going to be at court. She's going to be eating unkosher food and all that type of business. The prayer of Esther solves this problem. Look at this. As for ourselves, save us by your hand and come to my help, for I am alone and have no one but you, Lord. You have knowledge of all things, and you know that I hate honors from the godless, that I loathe the bed of the uncircumcised, of any foreigner whatsoever. You know I'm under constraint, that I am eating food that is not acceptable, and that I'm doing that. She's begging God to forgive her, but she's doing it all because she knows that this is how you save Israel. So you see, there is a wonderful little business about this version of the Greek version of Esther. And normally I would recommend it for us to get rid of the Hebrew one and do it, except that the Hebrew one really works so well because, in fact, it's what you call a travesty. Now, travesty in our English language is not an acceptable word. This is a travesty. It means something. But in fact, rhetorically speaking, a travesty is something extremely serious being spoken about in a very comic way. So there is a lot of comedy in this. Not obvious, but in fact very obvious. For example, think about it. Ahasuerus, what kind of personality is he? He's just the idiot who will always listen to the last person who talked to him. So the character is not particularly great. What is Haman? Haman is such a small little minded person that he goes around telling everyone, including his family, his greatness and how they should be worthy of him and all this business. But in fact, there's something wrong with Haman because everyone at court knows that Esther is Mordecai's cousin. Everyone knows because they're shuttling information back and forth between Esther and Mordecai at all time. He's the only one who doesn't know it. It's so strange. The other thing also that is absolutely wonderful in the way the Hebrew story tells you is that the story depends, you will not find it in the Greek clear enough, but in the Hebrew it is. It depends on an absolutely wonderful play of events that fall in together to make the plot work. What is this event? The event is that when Haman goes to the second banquet, and by the way, if you look at the Hebrew carefully, banquets are everywhere, and they set the marking post for the story are banquets. 2 banquets at the beginning, 2 banquets at the end. Okay. So he comes to the second banquet, and at that point, Esther, who plays very coy, oh, king, I got to tell you about this horrible thing that's happening. There's a person who's going to kill us all, and he is going to destroy us. And I wouldn't say anything about it if it was a fact that something that you have said. And in fact, the king